So the first concept we're going to look at is active learning. So what is active learning? So it's been defined as anything that involves students in doing things and thinking about the things they're doing. So here the student is really at the centre of learning. They are actively engaged in their own learning, not passively just receiving information and hoping it will stick. So students are challenged by activities that encourage them to think, to apply ideas and to transfer their knowledge. And the focus here is on what the student does and how they do it, and not what the teacher does. So why is it effective? Well, you've probably all seen this cone of learning before from Edgar Dale. It neatly demonstrates the effectiveness of active learning. So when we engage in passive learning activities such as reading, listening and watching, we don't retain anywhere near as much information as when we are active. So this is why the format of online training videos like this is quite challenging, because we really have to look for ways of making that active so you're not just listening to me all the time. And that's why we've linked these videos to the creation of your scheme of works that you actually have to do. So down at the bottom of the cone now you can see that we retain much more when we're actively engaged, when we're talking, when we're actually doing something, where we're experiencing the real thing. So active learning is based on the theory of constructivism, and this was a theory first developed by Jean Piaget, and his theory of cognitive development argues that people gain knowledge by constructing their own understanding. So they're not receiving it, they're actually constructing it themselves. This is done through connecting what they already know, so their mental schema, as it's referred to, with new information and new experiences. It's focused on learning by doing and using that experience to transform what we already know. So a constructivist approach results in deeper learning. New information is related to existing information and new meaning is formed. And students are able to reach their own understanding and are more likely to be able to transfer concepts across different subjects. So when students are engaged in rote learning, so passively listening to a lecture, for example, it's much harder for them to make sense of new information and connect it to what they already know. So in a constructivist classroom, the teacher really becomes a facilitator. So you're not just giving them information, you're creating an environment, designing activities which enable students to apply or test the knowledge. And so here sometimes experiences will confirm and build on a student's prior knowledge, and sometimes students will find their pre-existing views opposed or challenged, and this is what we call cognitive conflict or cognitive dissonance. And then the students have to go through a process of reconfiguring their own constructs themselves. And this results in deep learning. So Piaget argued that deep learning doesn't occur when teachers attempt to just transmit information to students without giving students opportunities for exploration or discovery. Because students will often accept the authority of a person they regard to be an expert, so you, and that can be at the expense of gaining real understanding of a topic. So you may well be totally right, but them just being told the information isn't the same as them trying to reach those conclusions by themselves or with guidance from you. So in the constructivist classroom, it's not just that, it's not knowledge, it's more understanding that is prioritised. So social constructivism expands on this theory. It says that active learning is most effective when the construction of new knowledge takes place in collaboration with others. The theory argues that knowledge is a result of language and social interaction. And this was developed by Vygotsky in the 30s actually, although he wasn't published till the 70s because the Soviets didn't like him very much. So he argued that language is the most important learning tool that we have because it's fundamental to thought and it allows us to communicate, negotiate and share meanings through discussion. He believed strongly that community and culture play a real central role in making meaning in learning. So I thought this was quite interesting, this quote from Laurelard. Learning through discussion is distinct from learning through practice because the act of articulating an idea is itself a contribution to what it means to know that idea. And I think, as a teacher, we recognise that when you have to teach something, especially something you're not perhaps 100% on, when you go away and research it, design a session, and then actually articulate those concepts and help others to understand, then we ourselves have a much stronger grasp of the subject, having been through that process. And I think the same thing applies here. So in a social constructivist classroom, discussion with peers and tutors is really important. It allows students to challenge or be challenged in ways that are different from learning through experience. they're forced to articulate ideas, rephrase them in language that they're comfortable with. So Vygotsky developed the theory of the zone of proximal development, which emphasises the role of the teacher and peers in facilitating learning. So he talks about 2 developmental levels. The actual developmental level, which is in the centre there, and that's everything that the learner can already do unaided without any help. And then the level of potential development, so the zone of proximal development as it's known here, and that is a range of tasks that the learner can achieve with some guidance or some assistance from a more able individual. So that could be you as a teacher, or it could be a more advanced classmate. So Vygotsky says that this is the zone of proximal development is the distance between the actual developmental level as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. So this concept can help us in designing classroom activities, so not pitching so low that the students aren't challenged or learning anything new, not pitching so high that they maybe get frustrated and give up and think they can't do it. And this is obviously really tough in a classroom with mixed abilities, so you need to think about a base level of achievement for students who will typically struggle more. Think about how you can put students into groups so that there's mixed abilities so they can help each other, and think of ways of making the activity more challenging for those who have a slightly more advanced zone of proximal development so they don't get bored and frustrated. So that's all rather complicated really, but something that can help you create activities at the right pitch is scaffolding. So this is a support mechanism that is designed by teachers that helps the learner complete a task in their zone of proximal development. So whilst we're not talking about putting up houses here, the basic principle is the same. Scaffolding is an external structure that allows construction workers to build a home by providing support. And as the building becomes more stable, scaffolding is gradually taken away because it's no longer required. You all know what it is. But this applies to the classroom in exactly the same way, and to broader curriculum design actually. So in the classroom, it encourages teachers to gradually reduce support as your students become more competent and more confident, and it encourages us to build in group activities, peer support, and in curriculum design we can think of scaffolding as we design learning outcomes across the year. So diagnosing student learning needs and the ordering of information and the types of activities across the year is really important to consider, because we need to think about where your students are starting, where they need to end up, and how we can build in steps and track their progress as we go along. But we'll come back to that in a later video. Another concept that will help us engage our students in deeper active learning is metacognition. So this is the process of thinking about one's own thinking. And forms of metacognition include reflections, so thinking about what we know, and self-regulation, so thinking about managing how we go about learning. Bransford says that teaching practices congruent with a metacognitive approach to learning include those that focus on sense-making, self-assessment, and reflection on what worked and what needs improving. These practices have been shown to increase the degree to which students transfer their learning to new settings and events. So we can make our activities more effective by including a metacognitive element. So in class, this can be as simple as building in time for effective discussion. Even if there are no reflective elements to your module's assessment, it's still really important and a really valuable way to spend some time in class doing this. If you want to dig a bit deeper into how you might integrate this sort of thing, I would recommend checking out Kolb's reflective learning cycle. There are loads of resources, and I'll add some links in the recap section about things that you can do to encourage more metacognition in your lessons. So to sum up then, effective active learning is student-centred, experiential, so it's based on experience and actually doing something. It's problem-based, it's social, involves lots of collaboration, it's scaffolded, so we give help and gradually take it away as learners become more competent, and it's metacognitive. So think about ways that you can involve students and facilitate them to construct their own meaning. So as far as possible, enable students to learn by doing and integrate plenty of group work rather than just lecturing them all the time. Include opportunities for students to review and reflect on previous learning as well. It's a good idea to vary your learning activities, and it's a good idea to also switch up the kind of activity every 20 minutes or so to avoid students getting bored. And think about how you can support these activities with other resources, so handouts and how you might integrate Moodle, electronic resources. We've got some new, not iPads, budget iPads, Samsung tabs, which you could use for in-class research activities, things like that. So think about what resources we either have or perhaps we can provide for you to make your classes more active. So next, just check out the discussion forum in the recap section for some learning activity ideas from other tutors, and post your own as well. I'll put some up there. And move on to the next chapter, where we delve into theory of constructive alignment. So this is going to help us apply what we've learned about active learning in the development of a scheme of work. And if you want to explore the theories related to active learning in more depth, then check out the next page. I'll stick some more stuff up there.